All right, there we are, live Friday night, and thank you for joining us. By the way, Sean, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing fantastic. But just a quick shout out to everybody on the Remembrance Day of 9/11 today. I just want to run that out there so we can have a moment of silence for uh, everyone that died during that, and all the firefighters, the police officers, everybody that was involved. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later today. But we're going to jump into the show, and we're going to bring up the attitude a little bit more. It's going to be a fun night. I might take my pants off. I'm just saying. It might happen. You won't be able to see it unless I do something like this. But hey, first of all, Sean? Yeah. It's all right. All right. Anyway, welcome everybody to the
Art and stuff. I'm Sean Ahrendt, and like Camplo, I'm Lucini pouring from the sky. And with me, as always, is my brother in art. I did it.
Yeah, you did it. You figured it out. I'm so proud of you. I'm the
every once in a while.
Every once in a while. I'm the very attractive, the very sexy, very distinguished. Always narcissistic but never vain. A staunch defender of Rob Liefeld, and a lover of all things 90s. Joseph Michael Sonntag, or Joe M. Sonntag if you prefer, as the Pope likes to call me, JMS. Welcome to the show. And before we get started, if you're watching on Facebook, cruise over to YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, share the YouTube. And I just want to remind everybody that we are going to be going to YouTube only on November 6th. So just keep that in mind. YouTube only, exclusively. YouTube.
Yeah, I still don't know what staunch means. Like, it sounds like
just like
something. No, wait, hear me out. It sounds like something you catch after, like, you go to a buddy's bachelor party in Vegas. It's like, hey, how's that stripper? She gave me staunch. It's like, how, put some cream on it. You know, like I would switch to champion. Yeah. Like, be champion, because like champion sounds good, but like staunch, it's cutting close to STDs.
Yeah, but you don't hear staunch very often. Think about it. That's why it works good. People will remember the word staunch,
but they don't know what it means.
Look it up. People need to be educated on terminology and wordisms.
It sounds like it burns.
It probably does burn. I mean, something burns right now. I know that. That could be the spicy nuggets I had earlier, though. So
there you go. There you go.
I see Mike McMahon's here.
What's up, Mike?
What's up, Mike? I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, but
just an F.
It's just Facebook. Maybe it's a meme. Maybe it's a smiley face. I don't know. I'm gonna take it as it's a big thumbs up for tonight's show, featuring. And I'm gonna throw it to the hype man, Mr. Sean Ahrendt.
All right. He was Rob Liefeld's Padawan. He assisted him during the New Mutants and X-Force days, moving up to Jedi status as Image Comics' first rookie, taking the helms on Brigade, also providing various layouts for the Extreme titles. During his 30-plus years in the business, he's worked on other titles such as Nightmare. His creator-owned book, Blindside, Demon Slayer, Law and Order, the hit book, Do You Poo, Hardly Thin, and Naughty and Nice. Graphic designer and my self-appointed Yoda that will be doing the variant cover for Type 1, Mr. Marat Mychaels.
What's up, brother? Welcome to the stream.
Guys, how you doing?
Great, now. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Hey, Rick, how's it going, brother? Raymond, good to see you in the chat.
Hey, congrats, buddy.
Congratulations.
Yeah, man, congratulations. Yeah. I did it on Facebook, but we'll have to do it here in person. Raymond got his Agent Solo book completely funded from a really good, nice big push from Rob Liefeld too, with an awesome sketch that I think all of us backers are going to get now. So that's super great. But Raymond, well deserved, brother. You deserve it.
Yeah, that's great when like your boys, are kicking ass.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Anytime. Thank you for the inspiration.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You keep us. I told you, man, just segue real quick. Raymond was the first guest we ever had on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally, when we got done with that show, I was so inspired to jump on my book and start working. Like, no joke. It was one of those things like he's an inspiring dude. My man Marat. Yeah, Mike.
Mike might be my number one fan.
Could be. Mike, you got to tell us what you sent earlier on Facebook because it wasn't coming up.
We didn't see it.
What's going on, Elliot?
How you doing, Elliot? Thank you for all the
supporter
support.
of the show. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so guys, people are still filtering in here. We'll pull you up when we get a chance. Feel free to ask questions. That's why we're here. You know how we do it. We're going to have a fun origin story, and then we're going to jump into some. Oh, I already did that. That's my fault. Messing up already. I dropped the ball already. There we go, Mark.
My heart.
Mark. There we go.
Yeah, I'm right. Yeah. Right. Get the hails going. I love it. I love that.
What's up, Rick?
So, brother, would you mind telling us your origin? How did you get into the business? What inspired you to get into comics or draw and anything?
So to get into comics, I went. What's up, William?
What's up, William?
All right. So origin story. I guess we'll do it from the first step. I was a geek.
Mm-hmm.
Dungeons and Dragons. Had no interest in comics. Used to go to the comic book store all the time to buy trading cards. Never bought comic books. Loved the cartoons and all that stuff. And my dungeon master gave me a comic book called Christar or Christar. It was like a comic based on a toy.
Yeah.
And he gave me number 3, or he sold me number 3. And I was like, well, I got to get 1 and 2. So I didn't even go to a comic book store. I went to a local newsstand.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there looking for Christar, I saw X-Men 173. It's the cover with Wolverine's running at you with Rogue on it and stuff behind him.
The Paul Smith book, right?
Paul Smith.
Yeah.
And like everything went dark except that book, and it started glowing. It was like, oh. And I bought that instead. And I went home, and that was it. I just read it maybe 10 times that night, just over and over. And I was enamored. And I started going to the local comic store. But my family was super poor. My allowance was like $1 a week. And so I like 1 comic a week. I think comics were like 60 cents, going on to 75, something like that. And so I can only really afford 1 comic book a week. But I was in that store probably 6 days a week. And after a few months, the assistant manager, I think 82, so I'm like 10, 11 years old. And after about 2 months, the assistant manager, he's like, hey, you're in here all the time. You just want a job? Like, we can't pay you. We can give you store credit. And the store was cool. It was called Golden Apple Comics.
Oh, okay.
And it was like...
Oh, yeah, Golden Apple.
Yeah, it was the store in the 80s. And, I mean, it was amazing because everybody used to come in there. Roy Thomas used to shop there. Howard Chaykin would come in there all the time. Dave Stevens, William Stout, Nick Cage, who was a huge comic book fan, would come in once in a while. I mean, and they had the most like amazing store appearances because they were a big store. They were one of the top stores in the country. And so, I worked there and kind of fell into all these other artists, fell in love with John Byrne and George Perez. And it was awesome because, I couldn't afford all these books, but I could basically comics used to come out on Fridays. I
remember those days. Yeah.
As soon as
I don't remember those days. But then again, I was way behind the time. When I was able to actually collect comics, it was far. I lived way far from the city, so I only got to the city every once in a while. So I was way behind the times. I don't even remember the Fridays. All right, I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, and stop talking during my words.
I'm sorry. Right.
Damn it.
That's it. I'm turning my camera off. I'm out.
Yeah, damn it. So anyway, long story short, or long story longer. I started going to a local comic convention that was held once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 12 years old, and I met a 16-year-old Rob Liefeld.
That's crazy.
And kind of through the years, we'd run into each other because we were both Southern California guys. And when I graduated high school, by that time, me and Rob had become really good buddies. I graduated high school in 1990, and Rob called me up and he was like, "Hey, you want a job?" And I was like, "Sure." And then he was like, "Do you want to know how much it pays?" And he told me how much it pays. I was like, "Well, that sucks, but I still want this job." But you know what? And my mom was like, "What are you doing?" You know, and again, he could have gotten anybody for that money. Like, it wasn't like that's just what an assistant got paid. I don't want to make it look like Rob was cheap.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, so I worked for Rob during the day, and then I drive home, and I worked at a video store, you know, video rental store, the night shift, and close out at midnight, and I go home and sleep, and very next day I get up, and Rob was probably about an hour drive with no traffic away, but I did that. I did that, and then that translated into transitioned rather into helping him out on some New Mutants and X-Force stuff, doing some actual penciling, and then he offered me Brigade, and the rest is history.
Now, X-Force 5 was the first thing you kind of had more of a hand in, right?
I actually helped out on 3 pages in New Mutants 100.
Okay.
And if you go like towards the end, like 3 pages where you go, wow, Rob really phoned these in. You know, he did the layout and I did the pencils, and then he tried to save them in the inks. So it was that, and then yeah, X-Force 5, I actually penciled half the book over Rob's layouts.
Nice.
And I was supposed to get credit, and then the editor dropped the ball after telling me for months, "You're going to get credit, Marat. We'll have you in the credits page, Marat." Then he dropped the ball. Damn it.
Bastard.
I agree. But on the other hand, when Rob paid me for my half of X-Force 5, I was not so
It was all good after that. Yeah.
I was not angry. It was that, like, for a kid that's, I don't know what I was, like maybe 18, just barely going on 19, to get that chunk of change.
Sure.
Like, it wasn't life changing, but for, you know, 18, 19-year-old, you're like, oh shit. Oh, can I say that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, come on. Debauchery here.
Fuck yeah.
So,
Debauchery. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it was like a oh shit check. Because my mom was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Mom," I sold it to her as it's like working in a mail room, and I'm gonna work up the company. That's how. So, which when she saw my monthly like checks, she was like, "I don't know what mailroom you're working." But then when she saw that check, she was like, "Okay, I'll leave you alone."
Right. Yeah.
Go get some stamps.
Yeah, exactly.
What's up, Marsh Makes Comics? How's it going?
Marsh Makes Comics.
How you doing?
A new name. I don't think I've seen that one yet. Thank you for joining us.
They're pulling in the films.
Pulling them in. Oh, sorry.
So when you got to when like Rob and the other guys broke off in the Image, and then Extreme started, you had a heavy workload kind of going forward, like handling like layouts too, right? Like you did a good majority of that.
Well, initially, that wasn't the case, but about a year and a half in, we started hiring all these guys who were very talented, and my storytelling and layout ability was ahead of my penciling ability.
Okay.
So, and Rob recognized that, because that's one thing I really.
What's up, Jerry?
Jerry, what's up, buddy? So Rob realized that I really picked up and kind of, I laid things out the Image way and the Extreme way, and the way Rob wanted our books presented. So instead of going back and forth with all these guys, you know, where they bring in layouts and Rob or would have to go over it and go do it like this, do it like this, I would basically do little thumbnails for them, and you know, they'd work off those, and they had a lot of artistic freedom, but they kind of had a base. And even to this day, a lot of guys I work with, you ask them what the hardest part for them is, and that's just kind of figuring out the storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, that's for sure.
Yeah, so so I did. I wound up laying out a lot of books. At one point, Rob called me in, and he was like in his office, and he was like, "Hey, man, I want to keep you laying out all these books because the stuff's coming out great, but are you okay if we don't give you credit on a lot of this stuff? Because we want these other guys to get some shine, and we can't look like you're, doing work for these guys. We need them to grow.
Right.
So the studios are helping. And I was like, "What you're paying me for layouts? I don't care." Like,
Right.
I mean, that's actually that's kind of cool they did that, because as a fan growing up, let's see, I would have been, I don't know, right around the 12, 13 age when I first got into extreme books. That's all you did when you looked into see who penciled the books.
yeah,
That was it, and then in my mind, all the credit went to that artist. I mean, that is kind of cool that the more and more I hear about how Rob handled extreme and how he really wanted to develop the talent, that's even more of a credit that he wanted to push them even more to say, hey, let's just keep that back a little bit so you guys get, spotlight to grow. I mean, that's a really cool aspect that you just brought out there.
yeah. No, it was, and it was, it was cool with me. I mean, like I got enough by that point. I think I got enough like love as an artist that I didn't need like all the like credit. I was like, I'm cool.
Right.
People like or hate my work at this point, one way or the other, and I was okay with not getting all the credit. So it worked out. It was cool. And then I got to lay out stuff for Rob too. So it wasn't just
That's awesome. Like that's really cool. Can I ask what books were you laying out at the time, like specifically?
The one that I laid out for a long time after Brian Murray and oh my gosh, there's a guy that followed up Brian Murray, Sean McManus. After they left, I did Supreme for a long time.
Okay.
I laid out a lot of the crossover books.
Okay.
A lot of the big like Extreme Sacrifice stuff.
Right.
I did a lot of layouts for that stuff. A lot of the Deathmate stuff. So, it's various issues. I think there was a couple of Newman issues. Like it was different stuff. It was basically kind of plugged me in where somebody needed some help. So it was all over the place.
That's really cool. We'll have to talk a little bit about storytelling dynamics a little bit later. I don't want to get sidetracked on it now, but I know that there's a few people in our chat that are always asking questions about pacing of pages and laying stuff out. Some of our young artists. And guys, I see some of the questions in there. We will get to them at here in a second. I just want to make sure we covered all of the origin story before I jump to push this in a different direction. I don't want to be rude, Sean.
It's a first. You don't get to fly that flag here, buddy.
Yay.
Yeah. But,
you want to know what flag I'm flying?
Yeah. Well, I always thought it was great. Like Mike kind of asked the question as well. Like the end of the Brigade miniseries to Brigade 1, Volume 2, it was like two different artists. Like it was like the jump was just wow. Like but seeing you go book for book, like here's a new artist, like book 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of, and then one came out and it was like, whoa.
Yeah, one came
new
out
level.
and it was just like this jump, and it was awesome. I loved it. That first issue of the Brigade regular series was tits.
Yeah.
Ass.
I think it's twofold. First of all, you guys probably got the books closer than they were actually drawn, because Brigade 3 and 4 were drawn, but they were delayed in the production end of things, or something like that. Coloring, there was some issues that delayed those books by months. So there was probably, instead of what you were seeing in Brigade 1, 2, 3, and 4, which was about maybe a month and a half between those books, me drawing them, there was probably a 6-month period between when Brigade 4 was finished and when you finally saw Brigade 1. So that was part of it. To you guys, it was like, oh, it's whatever, a month and a half, 2 months between them.
Right.
Sure.
It had been a long time between me actually drawing them. And also, the thing that you can't substitute is actually doing the work, because you learn as you draw and you gain confidence. And I was also inspired because Norm knows this, being a little pompous, everything I didn't like about Brigade in my mind was like, well, I got Norm, who's a first-time out inker. I'm not being inked the way I want. I'm not being colored the way I want. So for Brigade 1, Rob brought in Paul Mounts to color it. Who
Okay.
had
It was awesome. Yeah.
one of the most sought-after colorists, and he was doing like this new airbrushing technique where they were in the airbrushing. So I was freaking excited because I knew my stuff was going to be colored so well.
Yeah.
So I was so jazzed. Plus, by that time, as the book was being penciled, we got Dan Panosian and Art Tiber coming in the studio, and it's before they became regulars, but they were starting to come in. And so Rob was like, hey, we'll throw a panel here or a page here to these guys. And so I was excited because I was going to get inked by pros. And the biggest thing is, as a penciler, you really learn a lot when you see somebody else ink your work. Because really good and seasoned inkers, they'll tweak it. And then you look and you see what you did in the pencils and you see what they did in the inks and you go, like it's like an aha moment.
Right.
But Norm couldn't do that because Norm's not inking seasoned pencilers. So he's not learning how to be a better inker from the penciler. And then I'm not seeing a seasoned inker ink my stuff. So we grew together and we learned together, but we didn't have those little accelerant moments. So plus like I said, I really found my sea legs. I got some confidence. When you're putting your stuff out, we got a lot of positive reinforcement from the Brigade miniseries. So kind of get your swag and you're starting to feel yourself and you're starting to find yourself as Brigade starts. It's like, I'm like, well, I'm going to try to draw like Jim Lee or try to draw like Rob or try to draw like Eric or whoever. And as the miniseries is over and I'm starting to do the regular series, there's this kind of like I'm still being influenced by everybody because all artists are influenced by other artists.
Oh, for sure.
Or
absolutely.
Either they're being influenced by other artists and they're being honest or they're lying. Like, they have a source they don't want you to know. Like, so I think by the time the regular series, I was kind of comfortable in what I was trying to do, a lot more so than the first 4 issues. They were clunky. I was like trying to find myself, and in the regular series, I kind of had an idea. So I think that was part of that big leap.
I've got 2 questions from Marsh Makes Comics here that I want to bring up, but actually I was thinking about this the other day. I want to say that the very first Image comic I ever owned was Brigade number 3 of the miniseries.
Nice.
I think that was my introduction to Image Comics because I was, like I said, I was a little bit behind the curve because of I didn't have the internet where I was living, and I didn't really get a lot of them. Well, the internet wasn't even around at that point, wasn't it? I didn't have it anyway, but I wasn't getting a lot of the magazines, so I wasn't hyping on like all the buzz, So I was living a little bit in the past, collecting all the back issues, just knowing who some of these guys were, like Jim and Rob and Todd. By the time I figured out the Image had already started, I had a grab bag. And the only reason I started reading Image books because I bought a grab bag from my local comic shop, and in there was Brigade number 3, and that cover of Seahawk and
Thermal?
What's that? Yeah,
Thermal?
or that it's a chick. It's It was, for one, it was one of those covers that sucked you in, because they're just in the badass poses and they're like on this big moon looking space thing. The colors looked awesome. You know what I'm talking about?
Whatever
Sean?
happened to that Paul Scott guy?
But yeah, anyway, so that was the first comic that ever brought me into Image, and so that was, I thought about that the other day. It was your art that sucked me into Image.
Oh, well, I'll take it. You could have picked better, but hey.
So the first question from Marsh Makes Comics, I'm just gonna say MMC. Did you live in the Extreme House, and what was that like?
I did. It was a freaking frat house, is what it was. It was it was like a college dorm. I mean, that's what it was. I was kind of one of the constants for a while, and guys would move in and then they'd move out and get their own place, and I'd be like, all right, I'm happy. I got the master bedroom, so like, no, it was cool, man. It was awesome. It was we all became, most of us became buddies. Most of us hung out. Um, we probably got ourselves into smaller cliques, but as a group, we all liked each other, especially during the first couple of years when the core was smaller. We definitely all loved hanging out, and it was a blast. I mean, nobody did dishes. I think there was dishes up, and the food had gotten so crusty. We literally like looked at it one time, and we were like, we just gotta somehow wedge this thing out of the sinks and throw it out because there's no saving these dishes. Like they're just bad. So yeah, no, the Extreme House was a blast. There was, like I said, I think it started off being me, Chap Yape, Byron Talman, who goes by Snakebite.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even remember who the fourth guy was initially. But I know guys would like come in and live there for a little bit, maybe a month. And, I think Matsuda stayed there for a while, Jeff Matsuda. And then he went and got his own place. And I know Chuck Jones stayed there for a long time. And yeah, guys, it was a blast, man. We actually had right next to the Extreme House was another house that was actually really a dorm because these guys got kicked off their college campus. So, once in a while we'd have like raging parties that we just go, screw it. We're just joining the parties. Like they'd have a party and we'd have a party, and then it was like, all right, whatever. It's just a big ass party now. So it was a blast, man. It was a blast.
Now, were you part of that whole block party? Like I remember Rob saying once that him and I guess Joy couldn't get there. They got to the end of the road, they couldn't park, and they turned around. They're like, they can have fun.
Heck yeah.
Nice.
Hell yeah, I was. I might have been the ringleader.
Stupid me. I should have known.
A lot of Jello shots that night.
Nice.
That was one of the mutual parties.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What's up, JoJo, Russ, Ben? Welcome to the show.
Hey.
Ben said it sounds like it was probably like at the Manor, and what he's referring to is when I was in my band days, we had a house that most of the band lived in. We all rented it, and most of us at the time were single, and nobody did dishes. And we would have the entire sink completely full, and then you would have like the counter space completely full. And at some point, you would stop using dishes and bought like paper plates because nobody wanted to do the dishes and nobody wanted to claim that it was theirs. So, I mean, every time we'd have parties, and it was the shittiest house. I mean, it was an awesome place, but it was just the shittiest house because we'd have, so many people over and party, and you coming in the kitchen, it was just like dirty dishes and flies and stank all over the place, and a bunch of fucking whiskey bottles and beer bottles and like all this shit.
That's where memories are made.
Oh, it was awesome. When you're in your early 20s, and you're fucking single and just living the life, it is what it is,
I wasn't single at the time, so I wish I was.
So getting back to I don't want to miss the other MMC question. What was your big lesson you learned from Rob on layouts?
Well, two things. One was he taught me whatever you want to call it, the inverted S or the Z.
Yeah.
Like basically when you lay out a page, your eye needs to move from top left to bottom right, and you need to take the person through the process. So that was one of the biggest things, and I think Rob learned that from Jim Valentino, if I'm not mistaken, because they were studio mates, and Jim Valentino is just his brain of all things comics is just amazing. I mean, that guy's like a walking encyclopedia. And I know he taught Rob a lot when they were studio mates, and Rob passed that down. And the other thing, and he was just talking about it in his podcast earlier this week, is the anchor shot, which is basically there has to be a shot on every page. And it doesn't have to be the biggest like shot. It doesn't have to be a jerk shot where it's like just a figure leaping or punching. Sometimes it can be a face. Sometimes it can be, an emotion shot, but it enters the page. So something on the page is a little bit bigger, and it's the thing that holds it down, and then you build the rest of the page around it. So those were the two things that really have always stood out with me, and then down the line, I think we discover things like the way, again, going back to the Z or the S, inverted S, the way you drop a shadow from panel 1 can lead you into panel 2. The way the smoke billows can lead you into panel 3. The way the bullets spray can lead you into panel 4. Those kind of things. So basically, every element of the page can lead you from panel to panel if you know how to place it just right. So, and I think that thing got embedded into me almost before Brigade even started. Because the other thing is, when I was Rob's assistant, and this is back before we could blue line things and print things out on our big printers,
Right.
I would do his layouts like super small and then blow them up to 11 by 17. And my job was to trace them onto the Bristol board.
Huh.
And it was like trace. Like, don't redraw anything. If it looks bad, I'm gonna fix it. Your job, Marat, is just trace it exactly as is, like a machine. And that was my job. And so just doing that, when you're kind of doing it day in and day out, you start picking up little things. And so I think that's where the storytelling aspect kind of came, because I think the one thing, and I'll give them all the credit in the world for this, people focus on like, is this foot drawn badly, or is this arm too big, or whatever. But Rob is a fantastic storyteller, and he needs to pay. And so I picked that stuff up. I had like, because we do pace things a little different, but I picked up a lot of his tricks just being his assistant. And I think that's why by the time Extreme year 2 and 3 came around, he was so comfortable with letting me lay out stuff. Like I said, he would ask me to lay out pages for him because he knew I'd give him what he was looking for.
Right.
So.
Yeah, he had posted something about that in the Rob Liefeld appreciation page, or whatever it's called on YouTube, the fan page.
Yeah.
The last couple days, I think it was this week, and just talking about how you did lay out so much at Extreme, like you talked about earlier with a lot of the crossovers and stuff, and that's awesome, just to be able to learn to be so good at storytelling that Rob himself is saying, hey, lay out my pages for me, because like I got other stuff I need to focus on.
I think it was either Memorial Day or Labor Day weekend where we had a bunch of books that were way behind, as And so Rob literally like goes, hey man, it's a 4-day weekend, but can you get these done? Can you get these done? And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And I remember hanging out at barbecue, doing layouts, my people, watching,
right.
football or whatever, sports, just doing my layouts. And I came in Monday or Tuesday morning, and I went to Voucher, and I was like, shit, like I did like almost 100 pages of layouts in those 4 days. So
wow.
Yeah, so it was like,
damn.
I mean, look, granted, there was probably 20 splash pages in there, so it's like part of doing the that early 90s kind of extreme image style was a lot of splash pages.
But that made it cool.
Yeah, I love
it.
Me and Sean were talking about before we went on air. I'm drawing Blindside, and I keep constantly going back to the thought of how would the 22-year-old you draw this? How would the 22-year-old you draw this? Because that's missing in comics anyhow. It's a visual medium. Like
absolutely.
So it was cool, and again, it's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So, and then there was just scripts that were ridiculous, like Alan Moore scripts that nobody wanted to do layouts for, because reading an Alan Moore script is literally like reading a novel. In every page, he would describe everything to like the tiniest detail, And initially you go like, I don't need to know what's on the shelf of this, bookcase. Except like then you get to page 20 and you go, oh man, that like book 12 that he was talking about that had the green label is the crux of this whole story. So like then you got to go back in and go, all right, now all these little details I got to make sure are in there because one of them could be the thing that's the catalyst for this whole story. So
it's funny.
Yeah,
Like I heard
Okay.
me, you, me,
You go.
me. Okay. I a while ago I'd heard there was some show that Rob was on and he was talking about Alan Moore. Now this was like a couple years ago, talking about Alan Moore's scripts, how hard they were for some artists to draw sometimes. And I think he was talking about a
This
War Child.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. The War Child thing. And he like put in this, I don't know if he read the script to us or he just gave like a breakdown of what it kind of was. And it was just like this impossible thing to draw where like some dude's standing on a building looking across the street into a apartment or something like that. And
Rob took a shot at it, couldn't break it. Valentino took a shot at it, couldn't break the code. I took a shot at it, couldn't break the code. Like it was the thing with Alan Moore is, from my experience, and I've had the honor of working on a couple of Alan Moore books. It's like sometimes he has like three things happening in the panel that kind of all conflict. He's like, we're seeing, Sean, the camera's in front of us. Behind him, we see directly behind him, we see, somebody sneaking up on him. And through the window, we're seeing that there's somebody behind that person. You're like, you're supposed to draw that. Like that's a movie camera panning around. Like, that's not one thing. And so you wind up either like if you ever see most of Alan's stuff, it's like these 9-panel grids because it's probably the only way an artist can tell a story. Most of the stuff. That being said, the guy's a genius, but sometimes that War Child script is like impossible.
No, I remember you guys were telling, like a group of us in Chicago, like the opening shot of it, and like visually it sounds awesome, but there's no fucking way you can pull it off. I was like, how did he even think of this to be on paper?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's one thing to write it down,
Yeah.
And to actually figure out a shot. I mean, that's the hardest part of layouts. That's why guys have problems with them, is because it's a lot easier to figure out, to type it up, than figuring out, well, I got to do this shot. But how does this shot, panel 1, work with panel 2? And how do those 2 panels work with panel 3?
Right.
And then you go like, am I doing the inverted S? Am I making the reader, flow through the page? Do I have the anchor shot? Is this please? Those things then come into play where scripting is, in my opinion, way easier to come up with the plot. That's why, when you see artists transition and they do plot and pencils, or plot, pencil, and ink, like, because we all have stories, and again, as you work from other writers, you kind of pick up the pacing and you pick up how to break down a story. And not saying every artist can be a great writer, but let's be honest, not every writer is a great writer.
Right.
So, pedestrian writer and an artist who becomes a pedestrian writer, like, what's the difference, So.
I got a question from Skull Diamond 94, but playing off of what you were just talking about, I never liked. Before we get to his question, I just had a question from what you were saying. I never liked working off of like a full script because I thought that really handcuffed me as creatively, especially when someone's breaking down what size panel it is and everything in the panel, and they're basically laying out the page for me.
Yeah.
Like I just trying to break into industry and download a bunch of test scripts just so you can do something to submit. I always struggled with that because that's just not how my brain works. And when I would lay out my own stuff or just get like a Marvel method, like the writer I work with for my book, I do the plots, and he's a scripter, but he helps me put it all together. We basically have a description of the page, but that allows me to do everything on the page that I want to do, lay it out how I want and all that kind of stuff. So my question to you was, do you like it that way? Have you worked with full script before? And if you have, do you hate it as much as I do?
Yeah, well, Alan Moore was full script. Alan
Yeah.
Moore told you this is how you do it, and this is panel 1, this is panel 2, this is panel 3, this is panel 4, this is panel 5. Page 2. This panel, panel 2, the
Yeah.
3. Like I said, he breaks everything down to a nuance. So I personally don't like it. Once you get past the fact that, again, when you work with an Alan Moore, you're like, I can't believe I get to work with an Alan Moore.
Right.
From that perspective, you're like, I'll do anything,
Yeah.
for me to draw on this page. But yeah, hey, Phil, I just did Phil's show Tuesday. But definitely creatively, the Marvel method is the way to go. It's and Rob let us kind of do that. Definitely led me. I can't speak for everybody else, but on Brigade, he let me, like you see it says co-plot. On Brigade 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He definitely let me have a lot of creativity. He basically go like, I need you to get from point A to point B. And this is point A, this is point B. And I need you to have these elements. But tell me what you want to do around these elements to get from point A to point B. And I kind of pitch him and he go, I like that. Let's do that. Let's do that. We can't do this, or I don't like this. But he did let me have tons of creativity, especially for a kid. And, the other cool thing was, it was one thing before Brigade came out. Because, my deal with Rob on Brigade was like, hey, Rob was like, hey, we're going to do this book. And, if it makes money, you'll get a percentage of the royalties. And if it doesn't, you get published. And I was like, all right, well, I just wanted my shot.
Right, yeah.
After the numbers for Brigade #1 came in, he could have been like, hey, this book is selling almost 1 million copies. Like, you're, 19-year-old, rookie. I'm going to, tighten the reins on you. But he was completely the opposite. He was like, go and be well, my son. Like, I trust you. Do your thing. And, and again, he let me take my bump. He let me make my mistakes on paper in front of, hundreds of thousands of, people. And he knew that I was built to kind of get better. And I did. So.
Well, I mean, that's how you learned back in what I'm assuming is those days. I mean, obviously I was never in the industry back then, but listening to Rob talk on his podcast and everything, like, I feel like that's how, when you brought in an artist and you decided they were ready to actually take over a book, they had a lot to do with the plotting and being a part of the book and not just dictating so much what you were going to draw. And do you think that's I think it inspired more creativity, more passion, more action, and all that kind of stuff that we all loved about the 70s, 80s, 90s book.
If you're
do you think that's what's missing, is that kind of aspect of creativity?
Well, you can't. Well, I mean, at Marvel and DC for sure, because even their creative people have to answer to their editors, who answer to the companies they're owned by. They're no longer just answering to the editor, because editors used to be what's the right term? They were a lot more part of the creative process because they had vision and they knew how to tweak things and push things in the right direction. But now the editor just basically has to make sure you get the work done on time, and he has to go to his higher up at Warner Brothers or Disney and make sure it's okay with them and make sure it's jiving with the movie or whatever license they have. So the creativity is stifled from the top down, where before it was like basically the editor in chief can, he was the final word.
Right.
So, and the editors in chief, guys like, Jim Shooter, Tom DeFalco, Denny O'Neil over DC or whomever, those guys, they had come from a creative background. So they understood what it was they were editing. They weren't just guys who were, going, okay, well, this needs to be done. And also back then, obviously everybody has taste. But back then, it wasn't like, I hate this style, so I'm not working with that guy. This is my cup of tea. So, like, now, I've heard people at, like, at conventions, at the bar cons, like, just talking smack about other artists. And I'm like, you're talking about, and I'm not even talking about guys we've discussed today, none of Damage guys, just other guys
Right.
now. I'm like, you're talking about a guy that I know moved the needle and fans like. So why are you shitting on him? Like, you should probably hire that guy because your book freaking sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what ultimately is always going to tell you how good you are or aren't? Sales. People
Right.
you with their, because I always laughed at like guys on social media. Oh, I got 500 likes on this piece. You still didn't sell it.
It's not paying the bills.
Yeah,
Right.
you were trying to sell it. You got 500 likes, and not one person offered you any money for it.
Right,
So what?
yeah.
Like, likes are free. People vote with their dollar. People ultimately tell you everything with their dollar. So, I think creativity is stifled at the big two for sure. But then you have companies like Image or where you can be as creative as you want. Like, nobody tells you, how to do it.
Well, I think it's guys like you, especially like in like the indie scene, that are taking the helm. Your career is successful. You're doing what you want to do. It's your own stuff, and you're proving to guys like Joe and I that we can do it. Like, granted, we don't have the name, but with hard work and getting out there and providing a decent product, you could do something. With hard work.
Look, yeah, well, hard work definitely. But look, man, in 2013, 2012, 2013, 2012, I think, I was doing Grifter over at DC, and I was at a local convention, not a local, Las Vegas. And a guy came by my table, and he was like, oh, man, your name looks familiar, And I was like, oh, yeah, I used to do Brigade. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're that guy. I remember I used to do Brigade. And he was like, Grifter. Oh, I used to love Grifter. Is Wildstorm still around? Like, the guy had no idea that they were sold to DC or whatever.
Right.
And I realized, like, he used to be that guy in 2012. Like, I'd been around, I'd done stuff, but, the highlight of my career had now been, 92, 93. So we're looking at, 20 years.
Yeah.
And I was at DC, and I realized my glass ceiling was, like, right here. Like, I was getting offers as I was finishing my run on Grifter. I was getting offers for all these, like, mid-tier books that I had no oomph to draw. Fill in here. Like, oh, we got, an issue of Legion of Superheroes coming up that needs a fill-in. I was like, this book sucks. I can't even read it. Like, I don't buy it. So, like I'll draw for the page rate. And so at the time, the conventions were starting to pick up. I was like, you know what? I think I can do the same amount from going to cons that I did, making my page rate at DC. Because I was also working 8 to 14-hour days, depending on, what the page called for. So it was like, it wasn't like I had time to do commissions on the side or do cons on the weekend. Like, I was, completely, 6 days a week, sometimes 7, working, full days. So I started doing the convention, and I started building my base, like building fans. And fans would come and oh, I like that Deadpool print. Cool. And then I'd see them again at another show. Oh, man, you got a new print. That's awesome. What else do you have? Oh, and I started doing my books. And so the whole point is, like, it's not like I had a name 7 years ago that I can come in and go, or 8 years ago, whatever, that I can come in and go like, hey, you guys remember me? I'm a fan favorite, so you're gonna follow me. Like I literally rebuild it from the ground up. I mean, a couple of years before that, I actually worked retail for the J Brothers because I was kind of doing research. I was like, yeah, they paid me to come and help work their retail table at conventions. And my whole thing was, besides earning the money, I was like, all right, I'm going to start figuring out what people's buying habits are. Like, because the J Brothers, J Company Comics, very successful online now, but at that time, convention retailers, that's all they did. They went from show to show to show to show. And so I was like, they set their tables up differently than other people. They put certain books up to get people to the table. And then once they got there, like I saw how they were like, oh, well, if you like this, then you'll probably like this. And it also taught me like how to be a salesperson, because I was a lot more introverted back then. But it taught me, like, I think as an artist, we sit in our own office in front of our drawing table or wherever you draw, on your couch, whatever it is. And you're kind of by yourself all day. Yeah. And so unless you're an outgoing personality, which by nature I wasn't, unless you're that outgoing guy,
what's up, Bear?
You're not a really good salesperson. Because even my first couple of conventions, I was like, well, if they want my stuff, they're going to come buy it. And if they don't,
right.
But then, eventually you kind of go like, not the cheesy, like, I'm going to give you the worst car in the lot for the most money I can get out of you. But you kind of do have to become a car salesperson. Like, you have to hype them up about your product. Up already, if a stranger walks up, you do have to be like, hey, man, how's it going? How's your show going? Like, and I like people in general. Like, I'm introverted, but I like people. So, and it was just kind of crossing that line from people starting the conversation with me to, if you approach my table, I'm not going to like wave you over if you're walking down the aisle, but if you approach my table, you're clearly interested in something.
Yeah.
So I learned how to be the guy that's like, hey, how's it going? Talk. Eventually you start seeing the same fans. You remember their names. You remember you saw them with their kid, and so this wasn't like, like you said, there's a lot of work involved in it. So there wasn't like, there was like this, hey, I'm Marat, I used to draw Brigade. You guys all remember that book. It was super hot. You love me. Right. Like, it was like, hey, you're that, you used to be that guy. I'm like, well, I'm still that guy, but later. And and I got a lot of this. Oh man, you've gotten a lot better. And I'm like, well, no shit, Sherlock. Like, I was freaking 19 years old when you were buying those books. 20 years old, like,
right
now, 20 years of experience and getting better. Like, if I wasn't better, it's not like, it's hard to make a leap like from 40 to 60. You don't make a huge leap. Like, at that point, you draw what you draw. Like, you get better, your style can change, but for the most part, you've kind of figured out you're as good as you're going to get. You're just going to get a little, better by. Right. But I mean, from your 20s to your 40s, like, holy crap, there's a ton of growth that happens. So yeah, it would suck if I didn't get a little better.
Prove that guy wrong.
Yeah, I got a couple questions in here, so I'm gonna get back to. I told you, Skull Diamond, I was gonna get back.
That's
to
a hard ass name. Whoever you are, that is a cool ass name.
Oh,
tattooed on my back.
What is your favorite part of making comics?
So layout, like, is always fun,
Yeah.
Jacob Bear with his dry sense of humor. just don't put his comments up. He should be drawing right now. Anyhow, he has to finish up an issue of Night Night.
There you
go. So definitely like the layout, and to me, scenes build to a crescendo. So usually it's like, my approach is like, I know I want this to happen. Like, this guy is gonna get the gun out of the other guy's, hand and shoot him, and then I want this huge shot of his head blowing up or whatever it is. And so to me, it's like, how do I make the story make sense to get to that point and do the layout, And then the other part that I personally love is when you're working with a great inker, after you send in the pencils, just to see those inks. Like, I happen to be one of my closest friends, like a brother to me, is Adalso Corona, who I think at the moment is doing the best work in comics as far as
it's awesome.
So just that whole thing, like that moment when I get the moment Adalso goes, all right, new pages in the Dropbox or new covers in the Dropbox, and I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, because I always know it's going to be awesome, and I know there's a chance it's going to look exactly like what I imagine it to look like, and there's a chance that he's going to completely veer off, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be cool. And so to me, that's always been like this amazing moment. Colors too, to some extent, but I'm kind of more an old school line work guy. So to me, the inks are like that. Yeah,
it's great with the Delso because it's going back to the days of the message boards. It's like a home, at least for me. Like you see your guys, you saw the talent, and then you just see the determination, again, the hard work, and like nobody deserves what they got more than him, because the guy is an amazing friend, stupidly talented, and I just love seeing. I can't wait to see where he's even like next year to see what he's doing. Because I love seeing him succeed. All my friends, but just seeing that, it's like the homegrown thing.
He's such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
And I remember when I messaged him the first time, I was like, hey, you want to cover over me? And he was like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm doing Phantom covers, and I think you'd be awesome on it. And then we did like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 covers together. We did like a couple of Phantom covers, and then he did a couple of other books that were, being developed that I got him taking the covers on. Then I remember Rob called me and he was like, nice, you broke him. Now I'm going to start. When he's broke him in and he got his sea legs, so to speak. So
yeah.
And Rob was ready to let him make some of his stuff. But
nice.
Yeah,
Raymond said, which team, Bloodstrike or Brigade, was your favorite to work on?
Well, I mostly worked on Brigade, so I'm gonna have to go with Brigade. Bloodstrike, I laid out some back stories for Chuck Jones, and then I think a couple of issues down the line. But Bloodstrike was not a book I was ever heavily involved in, so that was Fraga's Playhouse, and then after that, Keith Giffen was doing layouts for Richard Ory, and so I wasn't that's a guy who's a genius when it comes to layouts too. Keith Giffen, that was a whole nother thing. One of my best learning experiences was Rob got the license to an old 80s book called Futurians.
Yeah.
And Keith Giffen was the writer, and he actually did layouts for the book before I got the job. So
nice.
it never actually happened. I think I only wound up penciling like 3 pages. But it was cool because Keith was more of an old school storytelling guy. And when Rob gave me the job, he was like, hey, pump up, make these more image style. But it was cool to just see how his mind works and how he breaks everything down, and then taking some of that stuff and going, okay, this shot, like he has a 6-panel grid, but this shot of this chick flying, that's going to be my big anchor, So the eyeball is now, instead of, 1/6 the page, it's small in the top corner. And then there's this, I guess I should be doing these backwards. And then
I'm dyslexic, it works.
There's this like big shot of this, chick flying, and then we're going to stack these panels on the side of her. So now it looks like an image layout, with still applying all of Keith's, sensibilities. So that was really a great learning experience as well. it sucks that book never happened, but it was a great learning experience. Who wins in a fight, Nightmare or Blindside?
Nerd.
They
So,
fight. They find out both their moms' names is Martha, and then they team up against the bad guy. So that's my story. Yes, you should go check out Pray for Sinner on Indiegogo. We did our soft opening, so I'm gonna now
plug
it.
There we go.
The Zerdy cover. This is kind of a book that has everything. It's got Dietrich Smith, who used to work at Extreme Studios.
Mm-hmm.
He did most of the interiors. I wrote it. I drew 10 pages in it, and I'd also inked those pages. And it's got some awesome covers, and it's balls out action. It builds the story. You guys should definitely go check it out on Indiegogo. So that's my show, and it has some great covers. Nate Zerdy. There you go. I like it.
I'm on it.
And again, we did kind of a soft opening. We really haven't promoted this remastered edition, but this is a character that's going to be around. We slowed it down a little bit because obviously in 2020 you can't go out on the con circuit and push it and promote it. But
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, Dietrich's amazing with kind of elements and settings. Like I said, he used to intern at Extreme. He's worked on Marvel, DC, Dynamite. He really did a fantastic job. And then you see my 10 pages, I go full-blown Image. 90s, big.
As it should be.
90s big. And Anthony George, who's on here, he colored this book. So
Z is awesome. Z is one of the best colorists out there. And he's another one where you see from his start on the boards. Yeah.
Yep. So
guys.
So you guys should definitely go check it out.
How do you like it in Indiegogo as opposed to Kickstarter?
I personally think I like Kickstarter a little more, but I'm this is kind of our beta.
Sure.
Like I said, I haven't really pushed it too hard. We might towards the end start kind of promoting it a little more. I'm still learning how to set up all the tiers and stuff. But they're both great. It's different strokes from different folks. It's like if you like getting your books graded, are you a CGC or a CBCS guy? It's just a personal preference. Is it Pepsi or Coke? It's like whatever works for you.
Comic Book Bob says, love to get you to come on the open mic night on Saturdays, get some more eyes on your project. And I think he's talking about the Jimmy Reyes Page One comics that they do with the open mic, where they have a bunch of people come on just promote their work. Definitely go on that. I was going to say, since we got the campaign up, did we want to watch the trailer at all?
I do.
All right. Let me bring that up. Hold on a second. I had to make sure I got the volume set on here. That's awesome. Haha, Mr. Trubisky. Yeah. Sorry. Chicago, baby. All right. That was awesome, man. Some really awesome art on that project.
See, the cool part is I wrote it, and so I could write all this stuff that I think is cool, but I don't have to draw. So
nice.
So I was literally like able to go this is not stuff I would want to draw, but man, Dietrich will kill this stuff. So, and a funny story, I told this on Phil's show the other day. So after the book comes out and I send Dietrich some copies, calls me up, and Dietrich's a guy who doesn't like almost anything. Like, he's one of those guys that goes, oh, like, that's his reaction. Calls me up and goes, hey, man, this book is really good. And I was like, oh, thanks. You worked on it. And he's like, no, I mean, the story, it's written really well. And I was like, dude, like, you drew it. Like, you had the plot. He's like, no. But, like, I was just kind of drawing what it told me to draw. I wasn't really paying attention. Like, I was just paying attention what's on that particular page. And he's like, but after reading it, like, this is a really good book. And I was like, right? Apparently I can write just a tiny bit because Dietrich actually liked it. So it was hilarious that he actually had never really, because like Sean was talking about, he likes to work out of order. So I might get page 5 today and page 12 tomorrow, and 1 and page 20 and page 18. So you never know what you're going to get. So I guess if you're just kind of drawing what it says to draw on the page,
yeah,
you don't kind of get the whole flow. But
yeah,
I'm super proud of that book. Like, I'm proud of the writing I did on it. I'm super proud of the art. I think Anthony Z did a fantastic job creating a lot of mood in the colors. So super proud of that book. And it's one of those, like, where Pray for the Sinner and Blindside are kind of our upper echelon tent poles for Counterpoint Comics. And so next year, both of those are going to be kind of when you come. Yeah, Raymond, I was just talking about it earlier. I'm working on a 48-page graphic novel right now. I'm about 18 pages into it.
Nice.
Thinking it. I think in the first 18 pages, we've got 3 double-page spreads. So, you know, so yeah, you know,
there was a question about Nightmare in there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one. I think it was just a statement.
Oh, I've never seen the Nightmare comic. I've looked, but it's actually hard to find. One of those days, I'll come across it. True story. One of my favorite things you've ever done. Like, I was there from Jump Street, right? Had no idea there was an issue 5. And we're standing at Chicago 07, and John Medic was like, oh, I got issue 5 out of a quarter bin. And I was like, there's a 5? So he took me by the hand, and I picked it up, and I'm like, would you mind signing it? I love Nightmare.
5, I was just doing layouts. I was doing co-plot and layout. No, Nightmare was so that was a really fun one. At that point, I wanted to do Blindside.
Right.
But Rob had 5 new titles that he wanted to do. It was kind of like almost a revamping of Extreme, because at that point we got like, you know, we were kind of like poo-pooed by the Wizard and stuff like that. Like, it was basically Top Cow was where your artistes were, and Storm is where you find, you know, your like good comics, and then there's these Extreme hacks. Kind of what they were trying to put on us. And so Rob was like, well, you can't put any, you know, once it's out of the bottle, it's out of the bottle. You can't put it back in. So he had 5 new concepts, and he took the whole studio out to dinner. And I came in going, I know he's going to want me to draw one of these books, but I just want to do Blindside. We talked about it. He said I could do it. And then he's pitching all these ideas. One was Maxi Mage, one was Evangeline, and some other ones. Then he pitches Nightmare, and I was like, so after, and he didn't like dole out assignments, but we come home from this dinner, not come home, come back to the Extreme Studios, the offices, and Rob goes in his office, I go into mine, and then 5 minutes later, I go and I knock on his door, and he lets me in. And I was like, dude, it's like, I don't know who you're giving what, but I want to do Nightmare. And he was like, and I'm like, I was like, I was very non-confrontational back then. I'm still not, but I really wasn't back then. And I was like, look, I'm not doing any of the other books. Like, I only want to do Nightmare. I'm not doing any of the other ones. And Rob was like, well, the good thing is we're not going to have a fight about this because you. And then those who know Rob, Rob's going to stand his ground. He was like, well, you would do whatever book I tell you to do. But in my heart, I was like, oh, I'm going to leave the studio because I don't want to do any of these other books. But I love it. He goes, but the good thing is Nightmare was the book I had you pegged for from the get-go. And so that was, and the other cool thing is at the time, I found, I didn't find him. I got Al Vey, who was an inker, to work on projects with me. And I liked Al Vey because he kind of had a little different flavor. It was more like, everybody at the studio was kind of had this Scott Williams style of inking, which was, Scott Williams is a GOAT.
Right.
Greats. But I kind of wanted this kind of more Terry Austin-ish look. There was a crispy bounce that Terry had that nobody's ever had. And I thought Al Vey kind of caught it. And so I remember when I first asked to work with Al Vey, they were like, why do you want to work with this guy who works at DC? And I was like, trust me. The pages started coming in and people were like, ooh. So the cool thing is on Nightmare, I was able to kind of actually do the line work I really wanted to do because Al really kind of was able to capture the thing I was going for. So it was a blast. It was a blast. And it actually got some of the better reviews any books at the studio we ever produced got. And to the point, I remember there was one article, it was almost like a backhand compliment. It was like, it's hard to believe this came out of Extreme Studios. It's a really good book. We're like, fuck you.
Yeah, right.
Some of the trash comments when they would hype up a book and they're like, this is what you need to be, this is it. And I look at it, I'm like, this is fucking trash.
Yeah.
I am not going to spend my money on this piece of shit, whatever it may be, from whomever. It just wasn't my cup of tea. And I'm like, there's got to be more people like me that don't think like this. Why? I don't know. From there, I knew it was a scam because somebody had to be paying somebody to be blowing their ego to getting it in your face,
Yeah. So, and as you kind of now, you'll hear stories of, things, and you realize how much of it was, based on, inner, politics behind the scenes. And look, obviously I got lucky. I met Rob when I was 12, worked with him for 20 plus years. He got me into awesome assignments, even things that had nothing to do with him. He recommended me for editors, and, editors would be like, oh, wasn't on my radar, but, this guy can go. So, things happen, who plays a part in every walk of life. But, sometimes you look and you go yeah, he's your buddy, but he sucks. There's guys who've gotten writing assignments. And this goes back to 60s and 70s, when you hear about oh, that guy got to ink, hundreds of books because, this guy owed some bookie and was this bookie's, nephew. And like that goes back, to the beginning of comics. And it's like everything else. But, sometimes it's you just got to get those opportunities. So some guys.
Go back to Nightmare, the gradation. I just remember on the metal and the colors just.
Yeah, again, it was fun because, it was the kind of thing I wanted to draw. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, when you're excited about drawing something, and when you're excited about the creative team, because that's the other thing in comics, to me personally, when you're working with people that you gel with. I had Robert Lauren Fleming, who was the writer, and me and Rob would get on the phone and we'd start talking, and I was like, oh, I want to do this, and and again, Rob gave us a plot. He's like, look, this is the stuff that has to happen. Everything else you want to put in here, just run it by me. That's funny. That's a great name, actually. But
trademark it.
So it's like I drew the book I wanted to draw, and I knew it was going to be scripted the way I wanted it. It would have the feel I was looking for. And then I knew this awesome inker would do my pencils justice. And then I knew we'd get good colors on it. So you're excited creatively because you're surrounded with people that you're vibing with and you're gelling. I mean, you're in a band. You know how it is. Like, no matter how good your band is, if all of a sudden, I don't know what you do in the band, but if the bass player sucks, you're like,
right.
The band now sucks because the bass player sucks. Like, no matter what, this guy's going to bring us down every time, So
yeah, absolutely.
So it's the same thing. Like, if any part of it, can bring the comic book down. So Nightmare was a blast and it was fun. And I saw Anthony was like, we missed Nightmare a couple of years back when Rob was working an Extreme Studios deal with Netflix that never came together. I pitched him an updated version of Nightmare that was just like, it's awesome. I don't know how I came up with it. It's really good. Hopefully someday we'll get to do it because it takes the basis of it, but kind of takes it away from being as close to the Punisher as it was, because it was very Punisher in some aspects. But I also, like, when Rob showed me the design, I love the design. Like, I couldn't wait to go home.
Cool character. Yeah.
So that's the whole thing. When you love what you're doing, you just have a blast doing it. And that stuff translates. Like, that's the thing that you don't get in a lot of comics today is people don't love what they're drawing. They're not excited. So that energy, the reason you loved, like when I grew up, the reason I loved John Byrne or George Perez or Paul Smith or whomever is those guys, you can tell John Byrne was excited to do the Fantastic Four. Or even when he went to like She-Hulk, he wanted to do the She-Hulk. George Perez loved drawing the Titans. You can, and then as things, Todd liked drawing Spider-Man. Rob loved taking New Mutants and transitioning from what they were into what he wanted them. Like, there's a energy on the page that's, that you can kind of see. You can't put your, finger on it, but it's there. Something that resonates, and that's because there's love and there's enjoyment in actually what you're doing. So,
yeah, I was to say, from coming from the artist mind myself, I've tried to work on other projects in the past that never came to fruition, but some of them I just took because it sounded cool, and some of them I just took because I was like, yeah, I'm going to work with a guy I like to work with, but I hated the concept, and I found that once I got into it, you always talk yourself into it, but like, well, I could do this with it, and this will make it cool, and then when you start getting into it, you just realize the passion is not there. And I've noticed it when I started working on my own book, that the passion was there, the excitement was there. What I started to produce was so much better than anything I've done in the past because I was so much more invested into it. The guys I brought in to work with me, I was excited about working with them. So that's the same thing, like you said, when I was doing music. When you had a good drummer and you had an awesome guitarist and you had a great bass player and I was doing the vocals, when you guys got in the room and started creating, there was an energy and an excitement there that transitioned to the music, and then you produced, in my opinion, some fucking badass music. It's the same thing when you have a good team together, you have good characters to work on, you just produce really, really good work because you love what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Raymond knows.
Yeah.
So.
I had a question, if I could jump back.
Yeah.
So we were talking, I don't know if it was pre the show or if we actually brought it up during the show, it all meshes together, but we were talking about Rob's podcast. And one thing he kind of brought up early on in his podcast were the rivalries between, the big names back then, like the Perez's and the Burns, and so on and so forth. And, how even the friendly rivalries between him and the rest of the guys coming up in Marvel and eventually the Image. how that pushed them to see what they're doing and do better, and like all this kind of stuff. What was that like? What was the competition like in Extreme with all the young artists coming up, between you guys, the new bloods?
Oh, it was pretty hardcore. I mean, there was definitely rivalry with me and Dan Fraga.
Yeah.
We were like the first couple of guys in, and it was Brigade and Blood Strike. It was the Blood Brothers, and we definitely had a different approach to doing comics. I was all about the layout and kind of the action, and Dan wanted to pack as much stuff, like. So it was definitely, and it was this kind of rivalry for, who's going to be top dog. And then then Chap Yates came in, and Chap was so phenomenally good so early. It was like,
Yeah.
oh man, it's not like who's going to be the top guy between us two. Like, to catch up to Chap. But it was also, and then Matsuda came in, and he was like this completely different flavor, and then people were reacting to it, and you're like, oh man, like, so it was very friendly. Like I said, I would say, if I had to break it down, me and Dan probably had the most adversarial rivalry from the pencilers. I'm just talking about the pencilers.
Right.
And then I'd say Chap and Jeff became the best of friends right away. So, and I was super close with those guys too, but it was like they were the two, and then like, Marat, you're welcome to come hang out with us. We love you. That kind of thing. But when you kind of click with somebody and you go, that's like that's kind of how it was with them too. And so then it was like, oh man, Dan, what are we going to do to catch up to Jeff? So there was a lot of, but it drove us. And it's like Danny Mickey came in, and Danny came in from being Art Taber's assistant, and so he was already pretty, on his game, and taught by one of the best thinkers of comics at the time. So he came in, like, hit the ground running, and then like Norm was kind of wanted all the sweet gigs that Danny was getting, so there was a little competition there. And then we got new guys coming in, John Sabal and Marlo Alaquiza, and then it's like, then now Danny and Norm are like, we got to hold our spot like these guys for our jobs. But it was all fair. We all really
right.
wrong for the most part. I mean, there's always going to be, you're getting most of us are between 20 and I'd say 28 years old. So you're getting a lot of like young guys, and as success comes your way, and some there's some jealousy and stuff like that. So it's but it was fun. It was we pushed each other, we drove each other.
But that also had you grow too. Like,
of course,
yeah.
Right.
So you're also looking at everybody's tricks, and they're looking at and you're like, oh, Chap is rendering like this, I can apply some of that. And you're like, oh, the way Jeff is doing these gleams, I can apply that. And they'd look and be like, oh, the way Marat's doing this, or the way Dan's doing this. So there was always something that you pick off from everybody around you, so even down to like pencilers looking at inkers, going like, oh, I love this effect Danny was doing. So like when I'm working with Norm, I'm now a pencil it, but then I'd walk into Norm's office and I go, and this here, kind of make it look like this stuff that Danny does. And then Norm would be like, oh, okay. And then Norm would like do that, but he'd like add some to it. And then Danny would be like, oh, okay, now I can add that to this. So it was really, it was really this friendly kind of rivalry, but we all wanted to outdo each other,
I think it's one of the benefits of working in a studio is the growth you get because of all the competition, or just what you see people doing around you that you add to your own work. You can try out things. I think that's one of the things that's really lacking amongst young artists today, where we just we have YouTube.
Yeah.
And then we've got social media where you can kind of see your friends what they're doing, but like that studio atmosphere, I think, is something that was really special that I wish was still around today for developing artists.
Yeah, you guys were like the Yankees.
And there's a synergy, there's this energy that's created. Again, going back to your band, like when you're just around other creative people, you're inspired.
Yeah.
So, and we had, and the cool thing is I can't speak to all the other studios, but in our studio, yeah, we all wanted to draw a nice paycheck, and we did, but most of the guys weren't counting like page rate. They weren't counting like, all right, if I do this page, I'm going to make this much or whatever. We were getting compensated. Most of us were seeing way more money than any of our friends were at the time, same age group. So money wasn't as big a thing for us because we were all getting compensated so well that we were just being creative and focusing on, and we were having fun,
Right.
A lot of us got to draw what we wanted to draw. I mean, again, I went from, my Run on Brigade / the Battlestone miniseries to like, all right, here you get to do Nightmare and then you get to do Blindside. And then Dan was like, from Bloodstrike, he wanted to do Berserkers, or, then he went over and did a Black Flag special. And then he went over to do, Kid Supreme. Like, we always got to play around and be creatively, fulfilled. So it was a great time to really enjoy what you're doing. So
I missed this question, but Comic Book Bob asked if you ever hung with Art T-Bear when he was with Extreme.
I did. So Art was maybe my favorite inker at the time, even above Scott Williams, because I thought he was like a combo of Scott Williams and Terry Austin. He kind of could do everything Scott did, but he did it with like this bouncier line, and I loved his work. And I also, the same monthly convention that I met Rob at when I was 12, Art Bear was a local guy, so I had known Art from those days too.
Nice.
Come in and set up. At the time, he was still, trying to break in and stuff. So I had to deal with Rob that out of every issue, I could get a couple of pages inked by either Art or Dan Nogent. And I loved Art's inks on me. So I would hang out with Art, and, once in a while, I'd be like, here's a splash page that I can get you to ink.
Nice.
Me and Art went way back, and we both kind of more mellow. We had guys who were like hyper and full of energy, and then, me and Art were a little more mellow, a little more like down to earth. And so, yeah, we talked, and, I picked his brain, and he had worked with a lot of guys whose work I like, so, yeah, the one thing anybody at Extreme would tell you, I was the connective tissue. Like, I was the guy that hung out with people, and like there came a time when Rob was dealing with so much stuff and Hollywood stuff and business stuff that like his door was kind of closed most of the time because he was constantly dealing with this stuff. And so people were like almost intimidated to go knock on Rob's door if they had any issue or anything. But so it was always like, hey, Marat, next time you talk to Rob, can you bring this up? So I was kind of like the guy, I was always invited into the office, and I was the guy who could bring it in. And I was also art director for a year. So, I got along with everybody. During the week, I would probably go to dinner with, 60, 70% of the studio at different times. The only guys I didn't really hang out with tons was the color department guys, because they kind of, except Snakebite. Me and Byron lived in the same apartment complex for a while, and the girls we were dating were friends. So him I hung out with.
See you, Comic Book Bob. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for coming by, man. Connell was
Yeah.
bouncing.
Take care, buddy. Thanks for hanging out. So yeah, it was cool, man. It was cool. I forgot what the question was because I went on tangent, but hey.
Oh, just you basically answered about the RT Bear.
Yeah, no, I hung with Art.
Before I get to, I know Sean's got some more stuff, but I wanted to get to this question because I was, this is always an interesting debate I have because I'm a traditional artist and Sean's, well, he does both.
No, you need to relax. You can
yeah,
relax.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But MMC asks, do you still draw traditionally or are you drawing digitally? What do you think about digital versus traditional?
Personally, it's traditional. Like I'll use the iPad and I have a Cintiq, but I'd say 98% of my stuff is still traditional. I'll do layouts, like when I used to do tons of conventions before travel kind of became a thing of the never. Like I'd get on a plane and I'd have a 4-hour flight, so I have the iPad and I got my Procreate going and I'll do layouts, stuff like that. But there's just something about, for me personally, there's something about the pencil hitting the paper that you just can't replicate traditionally. I mean, so for me personally, that's I'm a traditional guy. But then I'll do like touch-ups. I'll scan the page in and I'll go, oh man, that eye is freaking floating, or that arm is broken. Like, so instead of like slapping tons of white out on it, and, trying to, I'll use the Cintiq or I'll use the iPad and, tweak it. So I think tools are great, whatever works for you. I mean, ultimately, whatever gets you to the finish line.
Sure.
Yeah.
I remember, I can't remember who it was, but I was hanging out with an artist. God, I wish I could tell you who it was. And he was like, hey, let's draw. And I was like, cool. And he was like, why don't you, I know you got pages to draw. Why don't you draw a page? Here's paper. And I was like, oh, I don't have my tools. I don't have my pencil. I don't have my lead. And he was like, you're an artist. If you have a pencil, you got your tools, And I was like, I feel stupid, but, And his whole point was like, who cares what tools you use as long as you get to the finish line.
Right.
So, whatever works for you. I don't think, I know a lot of guys love digital. It's just not my thing. Like, I'll use it when I have to, and it's a great tool, but ultimately, I tried. It's just, I'm old school that way.
Right.
Like
for me, it's just,
I learned the method of like my layouts through you. Like I'm always asking you questions. I'm like, I dissect your shit. I'm like, oh, you did this. What's the size for this? Just so if I get what you're telling me, like it's legit, But if I come up with it, it's kind of off. But doing my layouts traditionally and then fixing them or cleaning them up digitally, it's a little more natural as opposed to going straight to layouts digitally, because it's a little too, not that it's perfect, but it's stiff, and I'm trying to work on it that it's not being stiff. So I'd rather work on the layouts traditionally and fuck with it there.
Again, it's different strokes for different folks.
Sure.
I like to draw small and then blow up and light box it. I learned that trick from Rob, who saw other people do it. And some people are like, oh my God, how do you work like that? You lose all the energy. And other people, they like to do the blue line lead and then go in with the regular lead. It's like there's no right or wrong way. Who cares? I can find you guys who do small layouts, blow them up, and then pencil them, who have tons of energy on their work, and I can find you guys who go blue lead, then graphite, who are stiff as a board, and vice versa. So, it's whatever works for you. I was doing loose layouts, and then I saw Roger Cruz, who used to do the X-Men and worked at Extreme on Youngblood. I saw Roger Cruz, and his layouts were as tight as his pencils, and they'd be like super clean because all he really did was just trace his layouts. And I tried it, and I was like, you know what? For me, the more work I do in my layout stage, then all my pencils are is basically a cleanup.
Right.
And even now, I do most of my inking on a light box. Like my pencils are small,
Okay.
and I blow them up, and I put them on the light box, and then I just go in with a marker, or a brush or whatever it is I'm using, and that works for me. Might not
Right.
for the next 5 guys, but it works for me. So there's no right or wrong,
Right. Yeah.
I know, guys who do the layouts and then like to print them out in blue line and then do finished inks. Works for them. I don't like to do that. I like, so it's whatever. I mean, I'm OCD. I like my pages super clean. So, yeah, and just whatever gets you the finish line. And what Russ said, it's hard to sell a digital art piece, but honestly, like I can really see a use for it for pages nobody cares about.
Right.
If you have a page of, 2 people talking in suits while they're having a cup of coffee, well, good luck
Yeah.
on that original page. Like, who cares?
Yeah. That's a good point.
Like people just want to, these days, I kind of followed the original art market. People want covers and splash pages, and after that, everything's like, so,
Yeah.
and again, I think, as an artist, you kind of draw with the thought of down the line, will this page sell? And that's part of your layout, like you want that big, cool shot that everybody wants on the page, but you can't sacrifice story or storytelling just to have a page that's commercially sellable, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Sean, before we ask the Dan question, I think I heard my daughter. I'll be right back. Carry the show for me because I know you can.
Carry the show.
But don't ask the Dan question story thing before I get back. All right, be right back.
I promise. So, how did you come up with Blindside? What was the inspiration? What was that?
So, I love Frank Miller's Daredevil, so that was part of the inspiration. Is I wanted to do kind of a Daredevil-like character, but the thing that I really loved is that his eyes were covered, because I wasn't trying to do like, if I couldn't, even if I tried, but I wasn't trying to do Frank Miller. So so that was one of the inspirations. Also, the other inspiration was I'm a huge Nightwing fan, so I kind of like used that as part of the inspiration. You can kind of see it in the outfit,
Sure.
And personally, I always like guys who are like athletic and flip, and Spider-Man is a big inspiration, part of it. That's why he kind of has the metal, rope that he's on. And then I thought Daredevil with a gun is a really cool idea. So it was just all those kind of elements together. And then story-wise, it was just, I was a huge John Woo fan, who was a huge director back in the 90s. And so it was just kind of all the things that I liked mashed together. And then I kind of started coming up with this cool story. And I had the face design from when I was a kid, but I kind of modified it a little bit to where now the eyes were covered and, there was hair and stuff. So, and again, it was what I wanted to draw. I wanted to draw, I had drawn guys who could pick up cars and,
Hey, Frank.
buildings and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to draw, kind of our version of, or my version of, that agile character that flips. And, I like the whole idea behind the name was he doesn't have a blind side, but it's not because he has a radar sense. It's because he has this supercomputer in his head that kind of tells him all these possibilities, all the
Mhm.
possibilities. So you couldn't really kind of do something to him that he didn't really see. And if you read that original, like 1994 book, I think that's when it came out, 94, 95, like it was kind of ahead of its time for back then. Like now, all the concepts in it, like a supercomputer in, a small disease strain, or, that makes your, brain a supercomputer. That kind of stuff is now pretty common. But back
Yeah.
then it was kind of like cutting edge, so to speak, because it wasn't really happening. So yeah, so it was like anything else. It was like creatively I wanted to draw. And once I kind of drew him up, I was like, "This is a character I really want to draw. Like I like drawing him. He looks cool to me." Um, and then, unfortunately, I like to say he was the kid that was involved in the Rob Image divorce. He kind of he kind of got hurt, and also at the same time, I had moved from California to Phoenix,
Mhm.
so I wasn't in the studio on a daily basis. So I think if I had stayed, we'd have figured out how to make it work because it did get people. People liked it. The character, clicked with people and it sold well. But unfortunately, it was what it was. But you know what? This new graphic novel we're doing is balls to the wall, 48 pages of action. Like I said, it starts off with a splash page, then you get a double page splash,
Got the whole Jack Kirby thing going on.
then you get action, then there's and it's what I want to draw. And again, and I'm also drawing it with this like passion and excitement for knowing that Adalso is going to ink these pages. And me and Adalso always talk about we might just publish it as a black and white art book.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Well, regardless, you should still have a black and white version of it.
Oh, we are. And this
Yeah.
it's one of those like all my other projects thankfully have been successful enough to kind of fund me doing a project where I don't have to go I got to make money to pay my mortgage off of this.
Gotcha, right.
Mhm.
This is my vanity project. This is the one I could be like, hey, look at my big 11 by 17 black and white art book. Me and my did. Do you want to buy it? No. Oh, but it's still awesome. I don't care. So it's a pure vanity project, but it's because I'm so excited. And again, I get to work with the guy I consider to be the best thinker in comics currently, and he's like a brother to me. So it's just like it's exactly what I wanted as a kid. I used to think man, how awesome must it be? Because I thought they were best friends. Only later did I find out that John Byrne and Terry Austin didn't get along as well as I thought they did. But I was like, they work on everything together, so they must love each other. And so, how awesome would it be if I grow up and I have my own Terry Austin, And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like now I'm like, well, Adalso is closer to Terry Austin than I'll ever be to John Byrne, but we're still going to produce an awesome.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. I can't wait. Frank he said just tuned in. Is there a blind side campaign?
We are
talking about it.
Finish the whole book before we do anything with it. So we gotta pencil in 48 pages. I also have because I don't understand why this doesn't happen more often here in the States. But B, it's also if you got weaknesses, then you find ways to compensate for them, is my opinion. So I got a buddy of mine, Bobby Breed, who's fantastic with backgrounds and little details. So he's coming in and helping me out on a bunch of pages where I'm like, hey, you know what? Bobby will do this in a day and a half. I'll do this in 3 weeks. So I'm going to pencil this figure. I'm going to tell Bobby, I'm going to, show him where the perspective lines are. And then I'm going to go, Bobby, draw an awesome background. And then, because in manga, they have full studios of people. There's a guy, his job is to draw speed lines. That's all he does every day. There's a guy who, draws explosions. That's his job. There's a guy who grids out the building, and there's a guy who does the finishing. And there's a guy. Then the main artist is the one who gets his big name on the book, and I don't
Hey,
understand.
Mark.
Hey, Mark May, what's up, buddy? Um, so I'm like, why am I gonna waste 3 or 4 days doing a background when this guy will do it better than me? And ultimately, I just want the best product I can produce. So Bobby Breed is coming in and helping me out on backgrounds. And there's pages where I'm doing, I'm doing the full thing.
Right.
There's other pages where I go like, you know what, kind of like what I talked about, Pray for the Sinner. And I was like, I wrote it knowing there's stuff that doesn't play to my strengths, but it does play to Dietrich's strengths. Mm-hmm. So I was able to write a little different because I didn't have to think like, how would I draw this? Or, oh man, I got to draw this. So same thing with like when I lay out blindside pages, I go like, I would hate to draw that shot, but freaking Bobby A loves to do this stuff and B fucking fantastic at it. So at the end, this book is going to be fantastic because I took my strength, my weakness, and turned it into a strength. So
that's really interesting concept. I've never really thought about that before. When you're just talking about the overall look of the book, that it's not so much the ego that I'm the artist. It's my name on the book. I need to do everything so people know that I did this. It's like bringing the guys that you need to bring in so that you can have the best looking book possible. I think that, speaking to me personally, not that I have an ego, but it would be hard for me. What? It would be a little hard for me to do that per se, because you would feel almost like you were cheating. I don't know how to phrase this, but like you were cheating.
Take your foot out of your ass.
No, but you know what? The thing too is, it's like, where are you in your artistic career? Also plays, right. Because I got so much love so early, and hate, but because I got so much positive reinforcement early on, mm-hmm. I don't feel the need to be not justified, but to be vindicated. I don't know what the right term is.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Need, because I was like, you know what? There's a lot of people that love my work. There's a lot of people that hate my work. But the people that love it, I already got that love. I tell people the story. Me and Norm, our first store signing on the day Brigade drops. We're driving to the store and we're about a block away, and we literally see a line of over 200 people just lined up around the block. And me and Norm turned to each other. We're like, well, it's a signing here. Like, so we pull up to the back. We go to the back of the store. We see the store owner, and we're like, hey, man, who else is signing? And he's like, what are you guys talking about? We're like, there's a line of like a couple of hundred people. He's like, no, these guys are here for you. So nice. When that's like, your first work, mm-hmm. Get that vindication of like, all right. Like, so, and I've had years, and luckily the last 7 years, I've gotten a lot of accolades and a lot of from fans first and foremost, to fellow professionals who are like, man, I don't know how you took this and made it work, this do you poo stuff, this naughty and nice stuff, like because people, when you're achieving success, people notice, from people at, like CGC, who are like, hey, we get tons of your submissions. We want to bring you out for a in-house signing.
Nice.
Like that. Like, so you realize, like, people see what you're doing. I literally have guys who, Marvel and DC artists, who walk up to me at conventions and gone like, hey, man, when are you going to poo one of my covers? Like, this like weird, like, rite of passage, like, so it's like, I've had that, like, the ego stroke. So I don't need all the credit, that's why I'm so happy to give it to all the people I work with. Cause it is a team effort, and that's cool. I mean, look, I'll use basketball, it's LeBron James is on the team. When you see the Lakers, you go, That's LeBron James' team, but you know, it takes 5 guys on the court every night. Patrick Mahomes, fantastic quarterback. He's got to have a wide receiver, or else those passes don't mean anything. You know, you can throw it perfectly, and if there's nobody to catch it. So that's kind of my whole approach to it. You know,
I
again,
think
it's because you're like, I'm like, all right, people have recognized me for what I've done, so I don't need that. But
right.
else, if you haven't had that moment, then you're still looking for that moment. So,
Well, I think what I could not articulate before is that that it opens my eyes hearing you talk about bringing other people in with other strengths to make the overall look of the book better. And it kind of reminds me of, you know, I've listened to a lot of Richard Friend's YouTubes. He was talking a lot of times about at like Top Cow, how even Sylvester would have a lot of background guys come in and touch up stuff, you know, and just when you think about that in an aspect where it's not just blowing the ego of the artist doing the book, it's like, what can we do to make sure that the book looks the way that it needs to look to sell and be the way it needs to be. So like, I think the more I mature as far as the production of a comic book and not just a drawing, it opens my eyes to the fact that, you know, you want to bring in a really good inker that can finish out and bring out stuff in your art that you're maybe weak on, and you know, you want to bring in that good colorist, and if you have to bring in background for a certain building you want to do, or a forest, or you know, whatever, you do that because it benefits the book, it benefits the fans that are going to read the book. So it's an eye-opening thing when you start looking at it like that.
Michael Jordan started off doing backgrounds for Mark Sylvester, and
Right.
that worked
Bread
out.
boxes.
Oh, huh?
Yeah. The bread boxes.
Yeah. So, you know, it worked out.
Raymond wants an Agent Solo Pooh cover.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
I got a question from Elliot, who is an artist like all of us, and he's always got some really good questions on here, and kind of going back to what we're talking about with the page layout and stuff. He says, how do you approach perspective in panels? Like when you do backgrounds, you draw an entire grid before you're laying down buildings.
Yeah, look, I hate drawing backgrounds. They're a necessary evil, but I hate them. You know, so again, when I do my layouts, that's always in mind. Like I'll have a shot in my mind and I'll go, oh, this is like this crazy perspective that I'll have to figure out and then do. So I'll go like, I'm going to pick a shot that's a little easier, you know. Again, it's because I just hate drawing perspective. It bores me. So
I feel you.
so, look, some guys love it. Like I said, Bobby Breed loves doing that stuff. He gets into it. But so for me, when I do it, yeah, I grid things out. Maybe not as crazy. Like if you ever see like Art Adams layouts, I mean, he really everything out. I'm just like, all right, here's my vanishing points, and you know,
right,
eyes in line, and all the basics. But and you know, kind of do a light grid. But yeah, I kind of when I'm laying out the shot, I always think about like if I have to put a lot of background in it, like pick the shot that's most manageable.
That's good advice.
Not stale, like you know, you can't just do like flat, you know, buildings all the time, you know. But you know, I personally will pick the easier shot when it comes to perspective.
You know, it's funny is if you sometimes simple backgrounds really do work sometimes, because if you think about when you're reading the comic book, you're going to pay attention to the word bubbles, you're going to pay attention to the action that's in the panel. You might not pay that much attention to the background. I mean, it's necessary for it to be there to paint the overall picture, but the reader itself is probably going to gloss over. Case in point, Spawn issue 1, you see some of the backgrounds that Todd did with some of the buildings are basically almost just silhouettes with a few lines. And then the colorist comes in and throws like, you know, a color scheme over it that looks perfect when you read the actual book. But I don't know if anyone has read the black and white version of Spawn 1 that he's released, or the Vault version, but you can actually see how he does backgrounds sometimes, where it's just like, all right, I need to get through this, and I need a cityscape, but it doesn't have to be all the tiny little windows and the gargoyles and all this stuff all the time. It can be a little bit more simplified because that's what it needs to be for that panel.
Well, Todd actually kind of gave me, again, when I was Rob's assistant, I had the pleasure of Todd coming to the studio, or, I would answer phone calls. So, like, Jim Lee would call and I'd be able to talk to him for minutes before, Rob would get on the phone or whatever. But Todd gave me some great advice. He basically, and you can see it throughout his Spider-Man run and his Spawn stuff, he kind of had a formula. He was basically like, I'm going to, in the beginning, in the first page, or maybe the, page 2 and 3, which is normally a spread, I'm going to give you this awesome background full of detail. And then I'm going to coast for the next 4 or 5 pages. I'm just going to give you inclinations. Like, you saw that, water tower. So now if I give you the silhouette of that water tower, you know what rooftop you're on, and you know exactly where you are. So basically for the next 4 or 5 pages, he's kind of coasting. And he's giving, like you said, he's giving you silhouettes, he's giving you edges of buildings, he's kind of giving you his reverse silhouette that he would do.
Right, yep.
All these like little things. And then he goes, after 4 or 5 pages, or unless you change scenes, I'm going to give you another really good background. So once again, in your mind, it's going to lock in. Man, he puts tons of backgrounds in all this stuff. And that's why Todd's stuff never looks empty. Then he, as he likes to call him, he does all the noodlies. So, so when he does like draw like a flat building behind him, he doesn't just give you the, like, here's the roof lines and here's the edge with the bricks, which is so simple. He'll go with noodle the crap out of everything. So you go, well, look at all that detail. But he didn't have to really figure out any perspective. He didn't really do any work that he had to think. It was just this real simple background that he just gave you tons of detail. And because 3 pages ago he gave you this awesome force perspective or fishbowl perspective or whatever he did in your mind, like, this book is full of backgrounds. Where it's like he'll do 3 pages where you get a side of a face, a close-up of an eyeball, and a mouth. Page, but like you don't even think like, oh, he's not doing any backgrounds, because he has this awesome formula of how to make your mind think like, yeah, this book is chock full of background. So, that's one of the awesome lessons that I learned from Todd.
No, that's a great trick of the trade right there. I mean, it reminds me kind of like if you show and establish where your character is at in a scene, that if you have, let's say, like maybe a fight scene per se, and you really want to focus on energy and movements and dynamics and stuff like that, we've already established that we're here in this place with the pages previous, that I can do a page now where it's an action scene. I don't need to still cram that same background in, because the audience knows exactly where we're at. So I can take a little bit of liberties with speed lines and stuff like that, and they'll just automatically know that we're in Times Square or something, or whatever.
And honestly, as impressed as I am by guys who do these freaking amazing photorealistic backgrounds, every panel pretty much, part of me is like, yeah, if I want to see a cool building, I'll drive downtown. I'll go look at the building. Like, not what I buy comics for. Like, I want to see things in comics I can't see on the street.
Right.
It's awesome if you can draw a freaking Ferrari or, or a BMW or whatever. But, if I want to see a Ferrari, I go into the hotty-totty part of town and,
right,
do an expensive restaurant. I know somebody's going to pull up in a Ferrari, and I'll be able to, I'll go to the dealership and take a look at what, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Things I can't see. Like, I'll never see in my lifetime Spider-Man swinging across the city. That's what I want to see. I'll never see Superman flying in the sky. That's what I want to see, more likely than not, I won't see this crazy spaceship, landing in the middle of Times Square and buildings breaking apart and, stuff like that. Like, I want to see things I can't see. So to me, it's like, yeah, backgrounds are important. They set the scene and they definitely ground your characters. But you if that's what you're noticing on every page, then I think the artist kind of missed the point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And that's another thing too. It's funny about today's comics and 90s comics just in general when you talk about the things that are drawn today. Like, a lot of critics of the 90s, you always hear about like the way weaponry was drawn or certain things were drawn in the 90s, and now today if you're going to draw a gun, it has to look exactly like this and blah blah blah. The cool thing about the comics in the 90s for me was that I loved looking into the fantasy world of a comic book and seeing them drive these motorcycles that you'll never see in real life, but it was cool to see, or these warships and planes that like Wildcats would be in, or Cyberforce or Youngblood or something like that. And it's like unrealistic to reality, but that's to me what a comic book was about. I think that's what's missing.
Creativity of it all. If you if you're not being creative and you're not pushing the envelope, or if you're not putting your kind of fantasies on paper, so to speak, not in a dirty and it's just kind of like, it's might as well take photos and run them through a filter. To me, it's just not what comics are.
Right.
So that's why it was cool. Like back in the 80s and 90s, you knew you could give John Byrne, George Perez, Frank Miller, Todd, Jim Lee, so on and so forth, and you can tell them to draw a guy punching a spaceship, and you knew you'd get completely different versions. You'd get different angles, you'd get different spaceships, like they look nothing alike, the proportions on the guys would be completely different because they had these styles and all this creativity bubbling over. Where today, I mean, there's literally 6 guys I can plop out of any Marvel or DC comic right now and tell them to draw, the exact same thing, and they look almost identical because they all have the same approach because they're all using the same reference material, and they're using a lot of digital guys use the exact same filters. So you're like, oh, they're all going to use this filter, and they're all going to use, this effect and so on and so forth. So
right.
I think that kind of stagnates creativity in some way. And again, I say all the time, I don't think comics has ever had better illustrators than it does now, and more of them, but it has less comic artists than it's ever had. So
yeah, I agree with that. That's a good way to put it.
But
absolutely.
I'm getting old, so I might be like, back in my day.
Yeah. I'm feeling you. Me and Sean, we're almost 40. I know everyone's like, oh, you guys are almost 40, blah, blah, blah. Still young.
Pushing 40. 39 next week.
Pushing 40.
I remember 40.
Oh, that's right. It is next week. Oh, yeah. So one of these days.
I'll be 40 again.
Yeah. Well, they say like 40 is a new 30. And then they said
that's
that
right.
when I was 30 was 20. So
that's right.
If they're spreading new rumors, I'll take them.
Look, I like my 40s. I'm looking forward to being 50 now. So, I'm gonna make 50 look good. So
yeah, I'm actually looking forward to my 40s. Oddly enough, because I was dreading going into my 30s when I was leaving my 20s, dreading it. And I've actually enjoyed my 30s quite a bit. So I think I'm looking forward to 40s because it is the new 30, man. It's how you feel. You still feel young, still look sexy. At least I do.
No, I never feel my age except my knees. My knees feel like they're 90s. So.
Yeah, well, you've had a bunch of surgeries, so I could imagine, man.
I've had a few
on your knees, not anything else.
Yeah.
But let's bring this back before we dip out because you blessed us with so much time. We appreciate it.
I was just about to say you broke the record that Dan had
Yeah.
Then when we had Dan Fraga on, he was the longest show we had. So,
The rivalry lives.
yep, there you go.
And since Dan brought this up, but I don't think it was here. It was probably one of his channels about I believe it was somebody's wedding, and Mighty Marat got his nickname from.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell this story.
All right.
So it was Eric Stevenson's wedding, and weird situation, but I had broken up with a girl, started dating another girl. That girl got a job I got her a job at the Image offices, and then we realized we're great friends, but it's not going to work. And I got back with my ex. Got it so far?
Yes.
So Amber, who works at the Image offices now, her and I agreed to be dates for Eric Stevenson's wedding before I got back together with my ex-girlfriend. So her and I go to Eric's wedding, and we could not find this place. Like, we had the directions, but neither one of us could figure out where this location was. I wasn't able. I had some family stuff I had to take care of, so I wasn't able to go to the rehearsal dinner. So I had no idea where this place was, but most other guys either knew or were going with somebody who knew. So we couldn't find it. So I was like, we gave up, and I was like, it sucks. I'll apologize. And I was living in the extreme dorm, and I went back to the dorm where my current girlfriend, who was my ex-girlfriend, So her and I just start hanging out, and I'm like, I keep telling her, I was like, I feel so bad, but this is before cell phones and all that stuff, and so fast forward, midnight, 1:00, all the guys come home from the wedding, and Dan's a little inebriated. And he's like talking. And then like he's, saying, oh, you didn't make your boy's wedding, da 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 da. And I'm in my bedroom with my girlfriend. And then he says, like, oh, you'd rather hang out with some bitch than hang out with your boy.
Oh.
He's drunk. And so honestly, if she wasn't there, I'd have been like, hey, Dan, calm down.
Yeah.
Right.
But she's there and she's looking at me like, are you going to defend my honor? And now, damn it, now I got to get up and punch this. So, we met at the middle of the staircase, and Dan was coming up and he was talking, and I was coming down. I said, Dan, shut the fuck up. And he kept talking, and so honestly, I really didn't want to do it. Like, I felt like I was forced into a situation that I had to.
Right.
The funny part, fast forward a couple of weeks, and I had a couple of people telling me that Dan's at the gym benching, and as he's benching, he's literally saying my name. And then, so he's like, and then again, from multiple sources, he wanted, so we had offices at this nice office building. He wanted everybody to go up to the rooftop and like form like a circle. And
nice.
like step into the circle and have like, I don't know, kumite or something. I'm like, I love blood as much as everybody, but I was like what? I was like, you're really making it into like more than it is. Like, come up to me and sucker punch me, like, or fight, like. But again, it's we're 21, 22. Drawing comic books, living this crazy life. Like, I'm sure, it was kind of normal at the time for him to have that thought. But yeah, he opened his mouth and got punched in the face. I mean,
that's funny.
We laugh about it all the time now, and again, if she had not been in the room, I would have never punched him for that. But
I did my fair share because of ladies.
You got it. You kind of have to, and when
Right.
the lady's right there. I mean,
And again, if he was drunk, he probably wouldn't have said that stuff. Or
Sure.
so,
But
you know,
sometimes you just gotta dot your boy in the eye, Just
yeah, sometimes it happens.
yeah.
He's probably should be thankful that Chuck Jones was between us. Chuck Jones was like
Right.
450 pounds. I don't think he thought I was going to swing on Dan the first time, but then he kind of made sure to keep us, because I would have killed him because I had the higher ground. I was like,
Yeah.
we're going to be punching up drunk and I'm going to be punching down sober. This is not going to end
Right.
for one of us, So
that was a story he told us. I think it was after we had the show and we were just hanging out backstage or whatever. But I think he did say that he deserved it. So there you go.
So, it is what it is. I mean, we were all in our 20s and did stupid stuff.
I've seen more fights between friends in their 20s than fights between like enemies or people. I mean, it's just what happens. You get drunk, somebody's drunk, somebody spouts off, two people are drunk. I've seen guys argue intently, like chest to chest, spitting, yelling at each other, and they were both agreeing, but they were so drunk they thought that they were arguing. That's the kind of shit that happens with guys in their 20s when you're drinking.
I probably on the basketball court I punched and been punched by my friends more times than not. One of my buddies freaking kicked me in the nuts.
Oh, God.
He was gonna lose the fight, so he kicked me in the nuts and went home before I could recover.
Ow.
Things get heated between buddies, and
Oh yeah,
is what it is. The nut shot was pretty low.
that's a little low. Yeah.
I was like, that's a bitch one. But there's the damn Fraga story.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've been waiting for that all night.
And it's funny because
Mark.
I went to Eric Stevenson's office on when he came back from his honeymoon, and to apologize because I legitimately felt terrible.
Sure.
We were buddies, and it's his wedding, and I was like, "Hey man, He's like, I don't care. Tell me why you punched Dad. I heard you punch Dad." that was part of it. It was like because it was kind of like the studio thing for a while.
I see. I never knew it had to do with a wedding. I just remember hearing that.
Yeah.
I don't know. One of our clown friends told me that happened, and
yeah, I mean, me and Dan, we were like brothers. So
sure,
it wasn't the first time we've gone nose to nose. Before this was the only time that we actually came to blows. But we got into heated arguments. We yelled at each other. We've been nose to nose. Just waiting for the other guy to swing, hoping he doesn't. Because
right.
You know how that is, where you're like,
oh yeah,
nose to nose with you now. I mean, but honestly, me and Rob have been nose to nose.
Mm-hmm.
And so things happen when you're brothers.
Yeah. If you can't tell somebody you care about more in this world to fuck off, who can you?
Yeah, exactly.
And then at the end of the day, get like a burger. Be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how that happened. It's a fun story to tell.
Yeah.
Probably
guy logic. You gotta love it.
Probably more fun for me because I was the punch. But it's still a funny story.
That's probably why he said when you guys have, because we told him that you were coming on in a few weeks, and I think when he told us that, he was like, you're gonna have to ask Marat to tell you that story. He's like, so I can tell.
I love Dan, and I love that we both achieved artistic success, but in such different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Considering we kind of started in the exact same pool, doing kind of very similar things with Bloodstrike and Brigade, that we've kind of both gone our own ways, completely different, and we both been successful doing it.
You're crushing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun.
No, it's great. Just before we wrap this up, like I make no bones. Extreme is my favorite. Of all the studios, whatever. But all of you guys are like titans. You know, you got Jeff Matsuda and like Chapiep crushing it in the animation field, Carl in the toy design stuff. So somewhere the stuff, you know, like everybody's doing their own shit, and you're still, I don't want to say relevant, but you're out there in people's faces one way or another. Like your product is there, and
No,
it's cool.
it is. Again, I think what we did as good as anybody is
Blood Brothers.
we found our own path. We didn't go like the only path is to draw for Marvel or DC, guy down, and we have to be monthly guys. Like I think we all were like, you know what, this doesn't play to my strength, or this isn't falling in place the way I was hoping it would. So instead of like just kind of running into walls, we all were like, all right, we're gonna do this. You know, some guys had more success, some guys had less success, but and we all had ups and downs. But like a guy like Carl, like after he started his own publishing company and had success being a publisher, you know, before any of us were doing our creator-owned stuff, Carl was like, you know, like I'm doing Deity and I got, you know, my own publishing company, and Rob was actually partners with them, co-publishers on a couple of projects. And then he went on to toys and, you know, realized that this was not the path he was, you know, going to achieve his most successful, you know, self in, and he went something maybe different. And Dan, you know, worked with Rob and then went to Marvel, did some stuff at Image, and then he realized he wants to go into storyboarding and has become successful there, and then has back into comics and has done, you know, so well with his Indiegogo and bringing Black Flag back and so on and so forth. And all the guys, you know, again, Jeff Matsuda went into animation and then into video games, and you know, Chapier, who's now directing a ton of, you know, cartoons and tons of animation and stuff. So I think that's the cool thing, is we all kind of found our way. And you know, John Sabal, from inks to doing, you know, sports cars and all that stuff. So everybody kind of used their artistic ability and found their own voice and went their own path. Where I see other guys, you know, kind of fell off because they were just kind of like, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do. Oh, this industry doesn't want me. So, you know, just kind of fall out of the public eye completely. So,
yeah,
we definitely had and then, you know, props to Rob for seeing our talents and giving us opportunities, you know, and then vice versa. Again, when I was art director, part of my job was going through submissions and, you know, figuring out who I think we should hire. And we hired Shannon Denton, who went on to work in video games and animation and editor at Wildstorm. And then the find that I'm most proud of is Andy Park. You know, Andy Park went on to freaking, you know, he's one of the top designers at Marvel for their movies and stuff. You know, it's awesome when you go like, there's a tree that's like,
right.
You know, and we found a lot of success in different ways. You know, and I don't think any of us, 92, 93, 94, if you asked us like, what would you be doing? I don't think any of us would be saying we're doing what we're doing now.
Sure.
You know, I'd say I'd be like, oh, I'd be drawing comics, but not in my wildest thoughts, because I hated drawing funny animals. But I think I'd be I'll do you poo and, you know, stuff like that. You know, but it is what it is. You know, as long as you're able to make a living and you're happy, then you're doing it right. So
I think one last question from Elliot that I think will be a good question to wrap up the stream with. He said, is there anything you'd like to do that you feel you haven't been able to do yet, like work on a specific book or with a specific artist?
there's tons of artists, you know, as a guy who produces his own books, there's tons of artists I like to get on, covers or whatever. So that list is forever long. But because I love comics, so I love artists, and new guys are popping up every day where you go like, oh my god, and then there's old school guys. So I'm like, I would love just to have a cover by this guy because I love his work so much, and just to see him do one of my characters would be awesome. But book wise, Nightwing is a book that I would forever love to do, but I feel like we actually pitched me and oh my gosh, his name escapes me right now. He used to work at DC Comics as a writer. He used to be Jeff Johns' assistant, and then he wound up writing a bunch of books. And him and I had this story, and he helped me flesh it out. Pitched a book to DC right before the New 52. It was a 12-issue Nightwing story, and it was epic. And the editor was like, we love this idea, but Grant Morrison has big plans for Nightwing, so we can't do it. And then Grant Morrison never did with anything with Nightwing, and I was like, and so, like, there's elements of it that I keep seeing, and I'm like, did somebody read this treatment somewhere along the line, or is it a lot? That's part of being creative too. Is like you always think you have this awesome idea, but another creative person probably has similar ideas, and you go like, that guy. Really like, no, we all grew up on the same stuff, so we kind of all just say things, have similar ideas. But Nightwing would be a great book. I would love to do. Maybe at this point, I don't have a 12-issue arc in me because a lot of those elements have been used. So maybe 2-issue max miniseries. Like
right
20 pages. Nightwing would be cool. I love Alpha Flight, so that'd be actually. It's not the whole of Alpha Flight that I love, but like Guardian, I always loved Alpha Flight.
Yeah.
So
that was always a cool look.
Yeah.
Cool design.
So and then I think we all have a cool Wolverine story in us. So that'd be a fun. But yeah, that's about it. I got to draw Deadpool. That was one of my
right.
So I got to do some Deadpool stuff, and Deadpool would always be fun. There's people go like, are you ever going to go back to Marvel or DC? And I'm like, yeah, if I want to take a pay cut, like,
yeah.
But honestly, like, if there was a cool Deadpool story that I was able to draw, that'd be fun. Alpha Flight is badass. So it's like, but again, I know I wouldn't get to tell the stories I want to tell. So, or in the way I want to tell them, because you hear it all the time, like, oh, they don't want anybody who draws in the 90s style. And I'm like, well, you probably should. Your sales would go up. Like,
yeah, absolutely it would.
Yeah.
That's the stupidest thing I've heard. That pisses me off every time I hear that. It's like, stupid.
You don't think like if Jim Lee went back to X-Men, like that book would freaking quintuple in sales, even though it's their hottest book. If you don't think Todd went back to Spider-Man, like Spider-Man wouldn't explode, like their hottest book is their most 90s book, and that's Venom. Like over,
Yeah.
Well, see, like the hottest stuff is all the Death Mate or Death whatever it is, Batman Metal, Death whatever.
Death Metal, yeah.
Death Metal. I'm like, that's one of the most 90s artists still out there. Like,
Yep.
90s. He's not 90s. He's just an artist with a style, but
right, yeah.
He's 90s. You go like, so your hottest books are kind of, talking about guys who are closest to that style. So what does that tell you?
Well, both editors must be from Hero instead of Wizard. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say if you look at like Brett Booth has openly campaigned to try to do some work at Marvel, and can't get anything from them. Seems like it's just like, who's making decisions?
No, and I'm not like a guy who's like, oh, there's gatekeepers, da 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 da. Like that's not my thing. But I know for a fact that there's editors that are like, we don't do that style. We don't publish that style. So it's like, oh, so this guy is good. And he has a fan base, and he'll produce exciting books for you, but you've already dug your heels in the sand. So this isn't going to happen just because your ego says it's not going to happen. All right, got it. That's a great way to run a business.
Yeah.
You know? So,
Yeah, the numbers reflect it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's cool. Brett Booth will do his creator-owned book and, make $1 bazillion and have a lot of happy fans. And, it is what it is. That's the beauty of the industry now. It's like, you don't need a Marvel or DC. You can reach out to your fans directly. You just got to build that rapport and know how to get it out to your fans. But it's never been easier to be successful in this industry. So
yeah,
I gotta say you're laying out a hell of a blueprint for guys like Joe and I. Just to see what you do and kind of go that way best we can.
But again, it's up to everybody. It's not like this isn't there. It's not like I'm sharing secrets. Like all this stuff is out there. It's like you just got to figure out what works for you.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Well, I tell everybody like what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. And then, like look at things like like Naughty and Nice has been very successful for me throughout the years. And but I look at like campaigns where guys are like, here's my hot chick, and they're using the same colorists and a lot of the same cover artists, and their campaigns are coming in 20-30%, which is still good. They're still great campaigns and make a lot of money, but it doesn't mean that just putting a hot chick on a cover is going to give you that kind of success.
Right.
I talk with Jacob Bear all the time. He's done a couple of campaigns, and I'm like, look, you can tell what people are reacting to. You focus on that. That's your thing. Like, stop trying to work on these other Jerry Rasco, the artist of the month in Naughty and Nice. So I tell Jacob, I'm like, dude, stop trying to do these other books that people are lukewarm about. Focus on the book that people want to see from you. And then once you build up, your financial security and a fan base, then you go like, all right, this is my vanity project, like Blindside. When it happens, again, we'll see. Can I sell 2 guys punching each other as well as I can sell 2 hot chicks and, funny animals and parody stuff? See, maybe not. Maybe people are like, this is not what we want from you. But I've gotten myself to the point where I can afford to take that shot. And
right.
So, but I found, I never understood people who kind of went against the grain when it comes to stuff like that. Like when people showed me like, hey, we like Naughty and Nice. I was like, oh, I'm going to give you more Naughty and Nice books. When people started reacting to the Pooh stuff, I was like, all right, this is, weird. I never thought it would catch on the way it did, but cool. Like that's what you want. I'm gonna keep giving it to you until you tell me you don't want it.
Sure.
Why am I gonna if you're telling me, hey, I'm a football fan, put on football, I'm not gonna turn it to baseball for you. I'm gonna be like,
yeah.
You asked for football, I'm gonna find a football game on TV for you. Like that's kind of like I don't understand the mentality of like, no, but there's this. Like, no, there's this, what you want. How much of that would you like? Like that's my mentality. So it's worked for me, so is what it is. Anyway, I gotta go watch before. I'm a basketball guy, so I gotta go watch.
I was just about to say, like, we're gonna wrap this up, and thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody that joined us in the chat, thank you so much for the great questions. You pushed this show to 2.5 hours, which is by far the longest show.
Fraga again.
So, from a guy to a guy you can't shut up. Like,
so, all right, everybody.
We're gonna be a week off because Joe is going to be tripping on shrooms next week in the woods looking for Bigfoot, and I'm going to be celebrating my 29th birthday. So we will see you all in 2 weeks.
happy 29th for the 10th time.
Yeah.
Yeah, 29, absolutely. And everybody, remember what day it is, and remember everything that happened. Never forget 9/11. Everyone that died, everyone that gave their lives. Be safe out there. Have a great weekend, and yeah, we will see you all in 2 weeks. So,
Take care, guys.
till next time. See ya.
It is.